National Fire Radio.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the National Fire Radio podcast, a podcast that is designed to talk about the job. I'm the luckiest guy alive. I get to interview the coolest people out there in the American Fire Service and talk about the job. Everything from guys riding backwards, officers, chiefs, up through companies, people, manufacturers, products, organizations, you name it. We're trying to capture the stories to promote the job and make the job better. So if you're returning and you're a regular listener, thank you. If you're new to the podcast, check it out and let us know what you think. Podcast at nationalfireradio.com is where you can find us. Send us an email. Let us know what you think about the show, people that you think might be a good guest, or anything else that you want to talk about. Send it over to podcast at nationalfireradio.com. We'd love to hear from you. And what we get to do is bring forth the word about the job. But in order to do that, we need the help of some sponsors. So do me a favor, hang tight, and listen to the words from a few of our sponsors. This episode's brought to you by Box Alarm Grills. When your apparatus arrives on scene, are you making the best showing? Looking to set your rig apart from everyone else? Want your engine, truck, or rescue to be easily identifiable? There is a solution. With large aluminum grill numbers and full-width rear mud flaps from Box Alarm Grills. Formed by Danny and a team of fellow firefighters, Box Alarm Grills gets it. They know what it means to show pride in your ride, delivering the quality construction and design that fire departments demand. That's why their grill numbers and mud flaps grab attention, enhance visibility, and make your fleet recognizable on scene while responding or just driving around town. Built in the USA by a family-owned business, Box Alarm Grills is quickly becoming the choice of fire companies, apparatus planners, and fire truck manufacturers with out-of-the-box or custom solutions. Check out functional, durable grill numbers and mud flaps from Box Alarm Grills today at boxalarmgrills.com and on Facebook and Instagram. And like Danny and his crew like to say, add pride to your ride. Taylor's Tins. Taylor and his team have been manufacturing aluminum helmet fronts since 2017 with over 200,000 shields in the market. Taylor's Tins is a leader in the American Fire Service helmet front space. Not only do they manufacture helmet fronts, but they do so much more. Locker tags, key chains, CO monitor charts, medical kit charts, pump charts, banquet awards, you name it, they do it. Go over to taylorstins.com and check out what they can offer you today. They've become a longtime sponsor and good friend of the National Fire Radio podcast, and because of that, they offer a promo code at checkout. So when you go to taylorstins.com, enter NFR Sent Me. That is NFR Sent Me, and you'll get 15% off your checked out order. It works on all stock items from taylorstins.com, including quick tins, license plates, locker tags, and much, much more. Exclusions do apply. This is a company that prides themselves on quality and customer service. From the inception, from your design to out the door, it's within 48 hours. Nobody else is doing that. They can't do that. 48 hours to get your shield out the door to you, to put it on your helmet, and get to the next job. Anyway, check out taylorstins.com. Again, that's taylorstins.com. Check out their latest offerings and use promo code NFR Sent Me. That's NFR Sent Me for 15% off on your checkout. And in the words of Taylor and his crew, stop burning up leather. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the National Fire Radio podcast. Today is an absolute special treat. This whole week, I got some real heavy hitters. Today is certainly one that I'm going to cherish, and I've been looking forward to this conversation. I'm a little bit nervous, too. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Even though this podcast is designed to just basically be a conversation between brothers who love the job, sharing a cup of coffee, if you will, today's going to be a lot of fun. I have with me today retired Deputy Assistant Chief John Norman of the FDNY. Chief, thank you for joining me today.
Jeremy, good for having you. Thank you.
Oh, man, this is an absolute treat. Now, I'm going to share a lot of personal stories because you were very influential in one of those pillars of the fire service that helped me find my way early on in wanting to do better and be better. And I want to go down that rabbit hole with you. But before we get there, for anybody that might not know you or if they live under a rock, I'm going to share with them a little bit of your pedigree so people have an understanding of who you are and where you've come from. So bear with me because it's only about 4 pages of notes, Chief. But 50 years in the fire service, 27 with the FDNY. You rode in some really busy companies. So Engine 290, Ladder 103, Rescue 3. You were part of developing Hazmat Company 1 back in 1984, a lieutenant in Rescue 2, captain in Rescue 1, battalion chief in 1999. After the tragic days of 9/11, you became the chief of SOC, which is the Special Operations Command, deputy chief in 2003, deputy assistant chief in 2004, where you were still in charge of the Special Operations Command, as well as now serving as the citywide tour commander. You're a best-selling author. One of the books that I keep and I have marked up, and I'm going to read a couple things out of shortly, The Fire Officer's Handbook of Tactics. That is a book that I got back in, say, 1999 or so that helped me formulate some real opinions about furthering my education and pushing myself in the fire service. You've written books such as the Fire Department Special Operations Command. Your newest book that is out now is Working with Giants, which I still have to get and add to my collection, as well as writing for numerous magazines, training articles, serving on committees, and the list goes on and on. Chief, it's an absolute honor to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining me.
All right, my pleasure.
Cool. So I don't even know where to begin, but I think where I want to start is really the foundation of where you come from. Because for the people that are listening, if they're not familiar with your career and your contributions to the fire service, you are a heavy hitter. And I said that in the intro, and I don't mean that in a weird way. I mean that in a very positive way, that you have been very influential in the fire service, where today a lot of the influence is on social media and those type of formats. But you were penning and writing articles and books long before the internet was even a thing. And your career throughout the fire service had to start at some point. And so I'm curious where that foundation for you began, and then how the love and passion you've had for the job and then paying it forward, where it all comes from. And I'm sure it comes from the foundation at home.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, always family. Your family upbringing produces you, and that's what worked out for me. I had a father who had a very strong work ethic and very strong patriotic streak. He was a World War II veteran, Navy, had been sunk in the Atlantic.
Wow.
And then shipped out to the Pacific, put on a new carrier, and came under kamikaze attacks out there. That was truly the greatest generation.
Sure, for sure. And so go ahead.
Well, he came back from the war and immediately joined the volunteer fire department in a town he grew up in. And that I did not know until years later came about because his own mother had died in a fire.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
In May of 42. And he was still in high school. It was, again, the height of World War II.
Yeah.
He went off to do his duty, but he never forgot that shock of his own mother burning to death. Wow. So he came back, joined the fire department in Inwood, became a chief there in the 1950s when I was just born, actually. And I grew up in a firehouse. We lived around the corner from the firehouse for a large part of my life. And he was working as a relief dispatcher on weekends there. And I would go and bring him lunch or dinner.
Right.
Wait while he ate, and I could bring the plate home. But in the meantime, I'd be playing on fire trucks. Every kid would love it on a real truck.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, he was always running out. He was, he was a dedicated guy. He was still going to calls at 50 years in the department, 70 years old.
Sure.
He was still running around the block.
I love those early days where, that generation was family, God, and community, right? Like it was, yeah. And those values, I mean, I grew up in a firehouse too, and those memories stick with you. And I feel that has so much to do with the foundation that gets laid of how we go after the job ourselves. And so for that, I'm assuming you rolled right into the volunteers then.
Yeah, absolutely. I was chasing fires, taking pictures, at 14 years old, riding around. I remember getting stopped by a cop at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was on my bike. What are you doing out at 3 o'clock in the morning? I said, coming back from a fire.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love this. I love that story because it resonates with myself as well. We used to chase the trucks all the time and get yelled at all the time by the officers. And it's generational. Like that love for the fire. There's still kids today that still do the same type of thing. And it might look a little bit different, but there's still that generation, that next generation that is wanting and longing for this career.
God, we need it.
Yes.
We need kids. We need to create that system to bring them in, whether it's an Explorer Scout post or, junior fire department or whatever it is, high school classes. We need to attract them and educate them on how great a job this is and get them involved early.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the values too, right? I mean, I just talk a lot about the values of what the fire service does, and as much as we need good people, there's some people in this world that need the fire service, and I think that the fire service gives back so much to individuals as well. I know, I have a lot to be thankful for my 28 years in the American Fire Service, and I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The slogan the Marine Corps used was, we build men.
Yeah.
So true. The fire service does the same thing. I stood back and watched, and again, I was looking at, World War II heroes, who never, said a word about their service, but these guys, you could see the scars on them, and, they just went out and did what needed doing.
Yes.
Then they come back and they'd have fun too. But they taught me so much about service, and,
Yeah. And so was that love for the fire service then? You're in Inwood in Long Island, which butts up right to Queens, right? So that's a busy neighborhood, right? Going to fires?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Back in the 60s, when I was growing up, actually, it started in the 50s. They were building the interstate highway system.
Right.
And one of the routes was planned. It was, I don't know if people understand what the interstate highway system is. It's not to get you to your barbecues. It's called the Interstate Coastal and Defense Highway System.
Right.
And it was meant to be able to get troops out to areas where they thought there could be like enemy landings. During World War II, there were actually, they put German submarines, put saboteurs ashore on Long Island.
Wow. Okay.
Getting troops out there on the old highways, old local roads, was a nightmare.
Yeah.
So one of the first routes that was planned was to be Route 878. Supposed to be interstate. It ended up just a state highway.
Mm-hmm.
But it came right through my town, and two of the houses that I lived in ended up getting knocked down to make way for this highway.
Right.
But in the meantime, before they, between the time they moved all the occupants out and the time they knocked them down, sometimes it was months, if not years.
Sure.
So you had a lot of vacant buildings. And then in the 60s, urban renewal became an issue, and they started knocking down a lot of houses to put up public housing developments.
Right.
And all those areas, again, we had lots of vacant buildings and lots of vacant building fires. So yeah, that was a lot of my upbringing. I had nights in Inwood that were as busy in terms of first do work and fires as any I had in the busiest unit. Serious.
No kidding. Wow. That's why. What a introduction to the fire service, huh? Growing up there and then being able to ride the back step in those days where you were spend sleepless nights going to multiple fires
with extremely great firefighters. A lot of Inwood at that point had 8 or 10 New York City firefighters, again in some of the busiest units in the world.
Right.
And they were also volunteers in their hometown. And these are the guys that had taken me into fires and teaching me how to do things.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Ball brothers, Joe Ball, John Ball, Jay Tavallaro. Some of these guys were absolutely legendary New York City fire officers or firefighters, and they're teaching me. So that really was, career forming
Yeah.
event.
Yeah. And
My first night in the New York City firehouse was in the spring of 1969 when I went in to visit Engine 230 with a buddy of mine, Joe Ball. And I'm like, wow, this is a great job. How do I get this job? But I didn't get it right away. It was 10 years before I actually did get hired.
Oh, no kidding. Really?
Well, yeah, my father insisted that I go to college.
Right.
And I went out to Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I served as a student firefighter and then later a part-paid firefighter with the Stillwater Fire Department. And when I came home from there, I came back to Inwood and I got a job as a fire protection engineer.
Okay.
Because I missed the 1973 test. I was out in college when they opened filing, and nobody told me that filing was open.
Right.
Missed that test. So yeah, I came back. Like I say, worked for about almost 7 years as a fire protection engineer in New York City, and then finally got hired in the FDNY in 1979.
So 79. Okay, so 1979 was your hire date. Okay, gotcha. I was curious about that. I didn't see that in any of the bios, so I was just curious when that was. Okay, so 1979. Wow, there's still a formidable time. I mean, the New York City was hopping still.
Yeah, it wasn't maybe the height of the war years.
Right.
But, 290, getting assigned to 290 had its own issues. 290 was the busiest company in the New York City Fire Department for 50 years. Wasn't like some companies, they were a flash in the pan. They, like in 77, Bushwick was burning.
Right.
And some of those companies there, did as many runs as 290. But by 79, that, firestorm in Bushwick was almost over.
There was nothing left to burn.
Yeah. So
yeah,
290 had 400 first alarm boxes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And the companies, they needed more companies there, and they never had them. They in the 60s, well, early 70s, they did put some extra companies in. They put in a squad company. Squad 4 used to come into 290's quarters. They put an extra ladder company into 103, ladder 103-2.
Yes.
But they had what they called the tactical control units. So engine TCU 531 would come into the neighborhood at 3:00 in the afternoon and just stay on duty till about 1:00 in the morning.
Right.
That was the only time the unit was open, but it was just during those peak hours that they needed these extra units because the companies were doing 6, 7, 8,000 runs a year, individual companies, and it was just third. Now they're back doing that, but it's all EMS runs.
Yeah,
or a lot of EMS runs.
Right, in the engine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does one get assigned to 290 in his Proby year? I mean,
I have no idea. It was sheer luck. No, my friends on the job, they were all up in the old 3-4 battalion.
Okay.
I had, like I say, Joe Ball was in 230 and then 102 truck. Billy Donald was in 124 and 216 engine. Peter Donald was an aide in the 3-4 battalion. All these guys, we're going to get you to 209 engine. And then you could do a couple of years in 209, and then you'll go across the floor to ladder 102.
Right.
And it was a great plan. Okay, I'm in. I don't know anything. And I have no idea how, but somehow when the order came down, I went to 290.
Yeah.
I don't know if the captain of a company, he can sometimes make a call to the Bureau of Training and say, listen, I need, some probies. Give me somebody that,
Right.
So
yeah,
I never
you had to make,
did find out how I got there.
Well,
But
I
I'm
have to
blessed.
I have to believe you made an impression at the academy too. I mean, for somebody that had that much love for the job and went to a lot of fires as a as a volunteer, on the outskirts of New York City, I'm
Well,
sure you were dialed in from the day you got there.
volunteer time don't count.
No,
But
but
I
your
did have,
love for it, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
did have some advantages, not advantages. I, like you say, had love for the job. I
Sure.
really wanted to do well, and I studied hard. And
Yes.
I did come out. I was tied with one other fellow, Gary Connolly. We were tied for
Well,
valedictorian
there you
in
go.
class.
Yep.
So
Right. Absolutely makes sense.
yeah, nowadays they give the top three candidates at the top three probies in their class, they give them their choice of assignment,
Yeah.
which, it's a way of encouraging people to study. And I think that's a great system.
Sure.
Hey, you want to go to a good place, study hard, work hard, and yeah, we'll take care of you.
Yeah. Those
So,
early days for you, riding at 290. I mean, the level of experience and the nonstop in and out, or not even getting back to quarters. I mean, I'm sure, from what I know and the amount of runs and fire duty that was happening. I mean, there were a lot of tours. I'm sure you weren't even back at the firehouse for. But what did those days do for you for setting up the early stages of your career? I mean, you found your way to special operations, and it seemed like that's really where you excelled in your career. And so how did that all transpire?
well, that all happened because I went to 290.
Okay.
And again, that was sheer luck.
Mm.
But while I was in 290, there was an officer assigned there, a fellow named Steve Cassani. He was my absolute mentor. Steve had been a firefighter in Rescue 1, gotten promoted, and he gets assigned out to East New York. And I first met him when he was working in 332 engine, next company over. And I was working overtime there. And I was like, oh man, guy from Rescue 1, this is impressive.
Yeah.
And Steve was a really great boss. I mean, one of the absolute greatest bosses I've ever worked for in my life.
Wow.
Really, really cared. And you asked a moment ago about, my passing it on. Steve really was like the hinge of that.
Got it.
He would teach people, and not just me, but he'd teach all of us, but he would take you aside and kind of give you the Dutch uncle squeeze, put his arm around and say, listen, kid, I'm going to teach you this, but I'm going to be really upset if you don't pass it on to the next guy.
Right.
And he always made you want to please him, and you did not want to, disappoint them.
Yeah, but he's not going to spend time with anyone that he doesn't know is not going to pass it on. Right.
Yeah,
like that's the beautiful thing about the informalness of the fire service, is that we look for people that we believe will push forward, and then we'll give everything to them so that they can then continue on.
Yeah. I mean, there are people, unfortunately, I won't name a name, but we have somebody that we know, we call him Ike, I-K-E.
Right.
His name is not Ike, but the Ike was assigned to him because when he got on the fire department, guys would be trying to teach him stuff, and he'd say, I know.
Yeah.
So they called him Ike. I know everything. And that nickname stuck with him, and that's a bad rap to get, Nobody wants to teach you if they tell you twice and you say, I know, and then they say, well, obviously you don't because you did it wrong again.
That's right. That's right.
So, yeah. But Steve, like I say, I worked for him for about a year and a half, and he was a great boss. And there were so many other great bosses there. The captain and the captain of the truck were both, extremely great officers. The lieutenants, Walter Schretzman, Clem Winger, Paul Buffer in 103. Great, great, great fire officers. But Steve Cassani just had, a little bit extra, because I don't know what it was. You can't put a finger on it.
Yep, I get it.
Every one of them cared for their people.
Yeah.
taught their people. But in my case, Steve gets transferred to Rescue Company 3. And I was so disheartened when Steve left us. And I was like, man, what a great boss, you know. And his replacement was the anti-Steve. He was one of the guys that made me say, I gotta study, I gotta be a boss. If this guy can be a boss, I can be, you know.
Yeah.
But then after about 6 months, Steve calls me and asks if I would like to transfer to Rescue 3. And I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Of course.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But so Steve made that possible. He talked to the captain, and there was a couple of things going on. I mean, I only had 4 years in the fire department, which is pretty unusual for a 4-year guy to go to a rescue company.
Right.
But I had, well, I did have 9 years in other fire departments.
Sure.
But that didn't count. But I was a New York State instructor in things like the Hearst tool. I was a state hazmat instructor, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
Because right at that time, Rescue 3 was designated as the backup hazmat company. We didn't have a separate hazmat company 1.
Got it.
So they wanted somebody who could help teach hazmat in Rescue 3 and do things, you know.
Sure.
I'd been doing hazmat. Inwood used to have a lot of tank farms. They had a very large propane gas installation. So I was very well skilled in flammable liquids, flammable gas firefighting. And I was an instructor out at the Nassau County Fire Academy at that point, teaching a lot of the hazmat operation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that opened a door for me to go to hazmat, to Rescue Company 3.
Right.
After about a year at Rescue 3, the job decided to open up Hazmat Company 1. And now they're looking for people to staff it. And I really did not want to go.
Yeah.
But one of the lieutenants who was actually covering still, but he was working in Rescue 3 for a long time, Jack Calderon, Jack was going to go and be a lieutenant in the newly formed Hazmat Company. So he leaned on me. And I said, yeah.
Yeah.
They needed, again, put a new company in service with people who've never worked together and who've never done real hazmat operations. That would not be a good thing. So they took 4 of us from Rescue 3 and Rescue 4.
Gotcha.
And said, okay, 1 in each shift, basically. So you could put a team together, and at least somebody had done it before.
Sure. And that was 1984, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's right when hazmat was really ramping up in our country and people were recognizing the importance of, being able to mitigate those types of responses and so on. And New York City, like always, is always on the forefront. So you guys were, I'm sure, way ahead of the national curve, if you will. But developing a new company within the New York City Fire Department is certainly interesting.
Especially an entire, organize a new ladder company. Yeah, you've got plenty of guys who've done that.
That's right.
Organize a new engine company. Sure. A new, entirely different type of unit.
Yeah.
No, we hadn't had a lot of that experience.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So how much time did you spend then at the hazmat once it got up and running?
15 months of a 6-month suspended sentence.
Well, I'm sure it was a good move for you too, though. The willingness to be a part of a new company, I'm sure, shined a pretty good light on you with bosses, I would think, when you were looking to move on.
Oh, I don't know. I went there, and each of us, like I say, they took myself, Connie Tinney, and a fellow named Chris Waters from Rescue 3. Chris was a chemistry instructor, high school chemistry teacher.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he had done, he went on to do a lot of stuff with the National Fire Academy, teaching hazmat through the National Fire Academy. But initially, it was supposed to be us going for 6 months to get the company up and running and trained. And then we'd be allowed to go back to our unit. And after 6 months, Chris and Connie went back to Rescue 3, but the captain says, nah, I can't let you go yet.
You're too good.
Well, I don't know. I was a junior guy, too.
I get it, yeah.
I had 5 years on the job.
Right.
Chris had 19 or 20, and Connie Tinney was at 20 also. And, he could squeeze me more.
Yep. I gotcha. Wow, that's wild. And then you do, though, after 15 months then, you do make your way out. And then do you promote at that point? Is that how you got out?
No, I went back to Rescue 3.
Okay.
Captain Billy Ryan was gracious enough to let me return.
Nice.
And again, I had about a year and a half in Rescue 3 and got promoted from there. So
okay.
It was a great opportunity. I mean, I'm so thankful to everybody involved all along the way,
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Anderson Rescue Solutions. Anderson Rescue Solutions was founded in 2016 by former Philadelphia firefighter Tim Anderson. As an urban firefighter and rescue specialist, Tim found that the equipment available to him lacked the usability and practicality in complex, high-stress environments that rescuers often found themselves in. To combat this, he developed products based on his own experiences in the field, creating innovative, efficient gear designed to thrive in reality. The multi-loop rescue strap is a perfect example of one of these products. Made in America, this patented tool is used for rapidly harnessing firefighters or civilians in the worst conditions. Every feature is fine-tuned to meet the needs of rescuers battling low visibility, low dexterity, and high stress. The multi-loop rescue strap has been used in numerous real-world rescues for both firefighters and civilians all across the country, and it is being increasingly adopted by fire, rescue, and tactical agencies as standard issue equipment. I carry one. I have carried one for many years. It is the most versatile strap out there. Check it out, the multi-loop rescue strap by Anderson Rescue Solutions. Tim Anderson, the owner and proprietor of Anderson Rescue Solutions, has become a dear friend. In fact, he's even been on the podcast several episodes ago. Dropped incredible information. He's super passionate about the fire service, about special operations, and he has built an incredible company and an incredible product. So because of our great relationship with Tim and Anderson Rescue Solutions, if you go to andersonrescue.com, you'll get 10% off if you use the promo code NFR2023. That's NFR2023 at checkout on andersonrescue.com. You'll get 10% off your order. And do me a favor, go over to their social media and check out Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for weekly news, product info, and other content in regards to Anderson Rescue Solutions. This episode's brought to you by Flame Decon. Developed specifically for firefighter decon, Flame shampoo, body wash, and soaps reduce your risk of getting occupational cancer. Live fire testing shows that carcinogens on your skin after a fire are removed and undetectable after using Flame. Flame Decon has made a product that not only does its job and does it well, but that you'll enjoy using. They smell amazing. They make your skin and hair feel great. I will be an absolute witness to that. I have used the product. Tara and I have known each other for quite some time. She has sent us product. We have used it, and it does take that smell of soot and smoke off of you immediately following a shower. It makes a difference. You can find Flame Decon products at flamedecon.com and use promo code NFR for 15% off your first order. That's promo code NFR for 15% off your first order at flamedecon.com. And for departments that are interested in departmental orders, more than one or two pieces of product, you can reach out to Tara directly at tara@flamedecon.com. She's happy to entertain any inquiries that you have. And this made me think departments need to protect their own, and protecting our own is also after the fire. Chiefs, purchasing managers, look into Flame Decon as a way of protecting our firefighters in and out of the firehouse. So check out Flame Decon at flamedecon.com. Use promo code NFR for 15% off your first order. Yeah. So you really, I mean, outside of the FDNY too, you're teaching at Nassau, you're teaching the Hearst tool, which, early 80s, that's when the Hearst tool really came onto the market, and hydraulics and vehicle extrication and things like that. And the rescue companies were really starting to become more diverse, I would think, through that time period too, right? With the level of expectation, the specialized equipment, right? I mean, that's really when the heavy rescue side of the job really started to take off, no?
Well, not quite yet.
Okay. All
I
right.
mean, our rescue companies had always been heavy rescues. They were doing
Sure.
building collapses. I mean, they were
Right.
doing back in the 20s.
Okay.
You know, it was the old rubber exposure suits,
Right.
but they were doing all these disciplines for decades. Uh, but the real focus on tech rescue in the FDNY didn't come until about the mid 90s when I
Okay.
got to one, actually. Now, let me back up just a little
Sure.
bit. In 1991, Ray Downey was part of the federal task force studying how to deploy resources, USAR resources. And Ray was one of the real early progressive people
Yes.
espousing the federal USAR task force concept. And he was really largely responsible for getting New York City to be one of the first 26 teams
Okay.
in the United States. Uh, so Ray was at that point, I was one of the lieutenants in Rescue 2 with him. And he was really, really, like I say, a big, strong leader and advocate for New York City professionalizing its heavy rescue capabilities. Like I
Right.
say, we've been doing it forever, but we didn't have a rescue school in 1983. When I went there, we did not have a rescue school. You learned from the people in the firehouse.
Right.
They would teach you hands-on stuff at drill during your shift. By 1990, Ray was still the captain of Rescue 2, but he was advocating very strongly. And we started developing a series of classes at the Fire Academy. And it was the origins of our tech rescue school now.
Okay.
Uh, and Jimmy Curran, who was a lieutenant in Rescue 1, was one of the heads of that program as well. George Crucia from Rescue 1. Uh, we started formalizing it, so everybody who came into any of the 5 rescues at that point went through a series that we called them modules.
Got it.
You did a week of confined space training. You did a week of high angle training, collapse rescue training, trench rescue training, and so on. So that didn't start until the early 90s. And then by the time, like I say, 94, when I became the captain of Rescue 1, that was okay. We're moving in the more formal direction. The rescue company was going to become CFRD certified. And the emphasis, and I was trying to get EMT training uh, for our people, for the rescue companies.
Right.
And that was 94, like I say, when that started to really get formalized.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Cause I know Chief Downey was, instrumental, right? I mean, that's what he's really known for, right? Is his contributions to the rescue services in the fire department of the city of New York. Yeah, for sure. What an incredible time though, right? To be there to develop the hazmat company, to work in busy companies, to then go and help create and mold and shape a new company, the Hazmat One, and then to be involved in the part of the rescue services, and then the actual formulation of SOC, right? In that time period, I mean, you were very much involved in some real pivotal times within the FDNY, I would think.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Very fortunate. Again, working with and for these guys. It was Brian O'Flaherty was captain of Rescue 1 at the time. Ray Downey,
Hmm.
Billy Ryan in Rescue 3. I mean, such great, great leaders. And the bosses at headquarters were just, willing to go ahead and put this out there. SOC made a huge difference in formalizing it. Prior
Yeah.
to that, like, we didn't work. I'm looking at a picture in my office right now of an explosion on 138th Street, and there's Rescue 1, Rescue 3, and Rescue 4 operating, and we never worked with each other
Mm.
unless it was that size event. We didn't know each other. You didn't do a detail to Rescue 1 or vice versa. So you'd never worked together and developed that hands-on relationship, and you didn't have the exact same game plan
Right.
till, like I say, 91, 92 in that area. So that was critical for us. It so professionalized the organization.
Yeah. No, I believe that formalizes the process, right? In the operations. It makes sense for sure. And to be a part of that, I mean, that's just a pivotal time. And then what, 93 was the first World Trade Center bombing?
Yes, February of 93.
And so, and I think that really highlighted a lot of the SOC companies, or the rescue companies for sure, right? With the explosion at the World Trade Center.
Well, everybody, had their role there.
Oh, for sure.
And that explosion, highlighted Rescue 1 was most known for Kevin Shea,
Correct. Yeah.
falling into the shaft and then being rescued.
Yes.
But yeah, we'd had tons and tons of events. This explosion that I'm looking at was in April of 87.
Okay.
And they've been doing, great, great things for decades prior to that.
Sure. What was your passion with the SOC companies? What about the rescue companies that really was why you wanted to be in those companies and then become a leader of them? Was it the excitement? Was it the variation? Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you go to every working fire in your borough.
Right.
First thing. And some of it, by the time we get there, they don't need, a rescue company. If it's like Rescue 2 was right in the heart of Bed-Stuy, between Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights, between two of the busier ladder companies in the city of New York.
Right.
Those companies are all great companies there. We weren't needed for our specialized skills or anything like that very often, but we were an extra pair of hands at a critical time in the operation.
Mm-hmm.
But going out to the outer reaches of the borough, there were times when you would arrive as the first alarm companies are coming out of the building out of air. And now you're going to make or break that fire.
Yeah.
And that was a great, great experience. But the variety of operations was, just outstanding. As a lieutenant, I was in a very busy tower ladder company right in the heart of Bed-Stuy there, ladder 111. And I loved it. They were great, great guys going to a lot of fires. But I missed the rescue because I was going to so many brownstone fires. That neighborhood, Bed-Stuy, is solid brownstones.
Right. And
the old saying is, you burn brownstones out. You don't burn them down.
Right.
I had my groups had 6 working fires in one building. I think it was 676 Platt Street. And it was still standing.
Yeah. Right.
The brick walls, they'd come in, replace new joists, floor joists, and they'd reoccupy it.
That's incredible.
But going to the other things, the unusual things, the ship fires.
Right.
111 didn't go to ship fires.
Yeah.
I had gone to ship fires as a rescue firefighter, and now I have an opportunity to get back into a rescue company. Yeah, I jumped at it.
Yeah, for sure.
All the special operations, the building collapses, train wrticks, you get special called to every one of them.
In the thick of it. Yeah, for sure. Then what was the enticement then to promote? Because I'm always curious about guys that get to really good companies and they're doing what they really enjoy doing and they're in the thick of it. And then, I know for you, furthering your education and promoting was important to you. Was that because you felt you could make a bigger impact on the job if you continued to climb?
Uh, Part of it
Yeah,
was. Part of it was the 30% pay raise.
sure. Yeah, real
That was
conversation, right? Absolutely.
my, my studying. The room where I studied, I had the pay chart posted. You know, all the ranks.
Yeah,
Okay, here's how much you're making at this rank, and here's what you're going to make if you get promoted. That was part of it.
yeah. That's called
And
incentivizing yourself right there. Push yourself
yeah,
to study harder, right? Yeah,
that's part of it. But you look at, like I mentioned, the Steve Cassani when
right.
he left and his replacement. There's no guarantee that your next boss is going to be as good as you are.
Right.
And believe that, hey, I'm getting pretty good at this. You should be looking to move forward, you know?
I like that.
Point, and it's, I don't want to sound, like a braggart or anything like that, but there came a point where I had passed the battalion chief's promotion test, and I was going to turn the promotion down.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, I don't want to be promoted. I was the captain of Rescue One at that point, and I was very happy there. I loved
Sure.
it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
Chief Dunn, Vinny Dunn,
Mm-hmm.
came to me and again leaned on me and said, "Yeah, you can't do this. You can't turn that promotion down." And I said, "Chief, I like going to fires. I like doing what I'm doing here."
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, look at your career. How lucky have you been to
Mm.
work the places you have? Don't you think you owe the job something?" I said, "Well, yeah, I think I've been paying it back. I've been, an instructor. Every time they ask me, I teach. I've written all kinds of training bulletins. I've done lots." He says, "Yeah, but who do you want to report into if you come up to a fire building? Do you want to report into a guy who's done the things that you have, or do you want to report into a guy from a slow place who only passed the test?" And I
Yeah.
said, "Well, I guess you're right. I see that point."
Perspective.
Well, that's what everybody else in this job wants too.
Yeah.
So they're looking for guys like you to be the boss.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's powerful. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
but a
And
guy he says that, you know,
well, to have mentors like that put tremendous value in you and your skills and your abilities to say, no, we need you to keep pushing up the line because we need more people like you, leading the troops and making decisions and forming, new guidelines and operational procedures and everything else. And so that's nice. And then you were able then to follow after, doing your being a battalion chief and promoting. I mean, you came back around to SOC anyway throughout your career.
yeah, well, only because of what happened on September 11th.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
I was very happy as a battalion chief in the 16th Battalion up in Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I plan to spend the rest of my career. I didn't plan to take the deputy's test.
Okay.
I wasn't looking to go to the rescue battalion. Well, at that time, it was called the Special Operations Battalion.
Right.
They had four, great chief officers there, and I was just very content going to fires and being a, battalion chief up in Harlem.
Right.
But
Right.
the losses of September 11th, they lost 5 of the 7 chiefs in special operations, plus Ray Downey.
Right.
And now they said, okay, now we do need you.
Yeah, the rebuilding, right? I mean, to get people back into those positions that can now take it forward and and so on. I mean, the losses were staggering. Being a New Jersey guy, I mean, that was right across the river. We got called in that day to go. I lost a few friends that day as well, and so on. And it was incredibly impactful. And for you to be a part of that, I can't even imagine what that did, to you and so on. But to pick up and to move forward, I guess there weren't any other options. I mean, that's yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
There's no, you say yes, sir, and you go.
Right.
You put your one foot in front of the other, and you just keep going.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And with that, as the company came out of, after the, 9/11 and everything that came from September 11th, and as you push forward, deputy chief in 2003, deputy assistant chief in 2004, go to a citywide tour commander position, right? I mean, that's got to be a lot of fun, because now you're not just what did you say, the 17th Battalion? Is that where you were in Harlem?
16th.
16th. So, now you're that it gets a lot bigger, right? And in that position, did you enjoy those positions?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, the first 5 years after 9/11 were
Yeah.
a tremendously difficult time.
For sure.
But, I was the chief of special operations at that point. I was a 5, 6, 7 day a week job.
Right.
Especially the first couple of years, it was, 12, 14-hour days.
Sure.
And it was mostly administrative. I was getting new people, recruiting new people, getting new equipment, writing specifications for new rigs, new,
Sure.
systems that have never existed before.
Right.
And now we're going to create these, creating a whole new types of units.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of administrative stuff. I would get to go on third alarms or any kind of, unusual, again, building collapses, trench rescues, any of that stuff I would respond to. But they're not all that common. So I spent a lot more time in the office than I did responding to runs.
Yep.
So that not as much fun as being in a field battalion.
No, but you're instrumental in moving the job forward, right? Because you're in a yeah.
Somebody has to do it.
That's right. And not only yep, go ahead.
We all, guys like Tommy Galvin and Eddie Kilduff and all these great people, they all felt the same way. Every one of us loved being a firefighter.
Yeah.
But, now all of a sudden we have this huge vacancy that has to be filled. And guys stepped up and said, yes, sir. And let's do it. And it created an absolutely outstanding team.
Yeah.
There was nobody looking for any personal praise or anything. It was nobody, in every organization is always a little bit of jealousy where, who is that guy? How come he's getting this job?
Right.
Or I should be in that job.
Right.
Well, in that situation, there was none of that. And every one of those people, we had teams building and doing all this stuff. It wasn't any one individual. I went to civilians in the fire department. The budget director said, fellow named Steve Rush. He doesn't get enough respect in the fire department, but Steve Rush was absolutely a tremendous, tremendous supporter who we couldn't have gotten half of it done without him.
Right.
Steve, we got a problem. We have a threat, in March of 2003 when the Iraq war started.
Right.
Suicide bombings in New York City any moment. We need this capability. We need it today.
Yeah.
And how much is it going to cost? Well, yeah, it's probably going to start out at about $500,000. I'll try and do what I can, John. I'll get you what,
yeah,
as much as I can. And he got everything.
Wow.
And the conversation happened over and over again with every person in the FDNY. Like I say, all the support branches,
Sure.
And a lot of these people are civilians who people say, well, they're not firefighters. They're as much a critical part of the fire department, and many of them are as deeply invested in the fire department as the guy in the busiest engine company.
For sure.
They don't get the respect.
Yeah. No, you're
Without
right, Chief.
Well, it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this: throughout all of this, and we just spent a lot of time talking about and we could talk for days, obviously, but your pedigree, your experience, your knowledge, your upbringing through the fire service, maturing through the ranks and ending up, in the positions that you were in because of the circumstances that were dealt and so on. But like all of that along the way, I was reading articles that you had written, back in the 90s and before you were a battalion, probably as a lieutenant and captain in the rescue companies. I mean, I remember thumbing through Firehouse, magazine and seeing an article by you, a training article and so on.
That goes back to another buddy of mine.
Okay.
Actually, I met in Oklahoma State in 1972.
Mm-hmm.
Harvey Eisner.
Sure. New Jersey guy, by the way.
Exactly.
Yes, sir. Right down the road from where I'm from. Yep.
Yep. Harvey and I met in Oklahoma State, and I left. I was 2 years ahead of Harvey and came back, and now I'm in Rescue 3. And who is one of the big buffs in Rescue 3? Harvey Eisner.
Right.
Harvey worked for the Bronx District Attorney's Office, and he was the nighttime crime scene photographer.
Yes.
So he would hang out in Rescue 3's quarters, which had great highway access to the Bronx, and he would go do his, Bronx DA work. And if he wasn't going shooting Bronx DA stuff, he'd shoot fire pictures. Harvey, we reconnect 10 years later now, and he's working for Dennis Smith at Firehouse.
Yes.
And he's like, I need people to write articles. Why don't you write an article? Harvey, I'm a fireman. I'm not guys who write articles in the FDNY are chiefs,
Yeah.
No, I need, I want the fireman's perspective. Talk about anything. I spent 7 years as a fire protection engineer designing sprinkler systems. Write me an article about sprinkler systems. And that was the first of my articles. And I believe it was 84.
Yeah.
80.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I owe that and my writing, the books, to Harvey.
What was it about writing for you? Like, did you come to realize that you had the abilities through your career to really be involved in some incredible stuff that not everybody gets to do as a firefighter, right? I mean, the companies you wrote in, the experience you were afforded by being in those companies, in those areas, those neighborhoods. Did you recognize that? And was that a way to share your experiences and knowledge? Yeah.
More importantly, it filled a void. I had 9 years in other fire departments before I got on the FDNY.
Right.
I considered myself a student of the fire service.
Love that.
In college, again, I went to Oklahoma State for fire protection. We studied what are known as the IFSTA manuals.
Sure.
IFSTA, International Fire Service Training Association manuals, which are written through the Oklahoma State University. We studied them, and we read the Handbook of Fire Protection back to back, cover to cover, and none of those talked about fire tactics. None of them told you how to put out a fire.
Right.
They 19 ways to pack hose or throw a ladder, but nobody talked about fire tactics. And when I got on the FDNY, the first thing you do when you're in probie school is they hand you a stack of books that's 3 feet high.
Yeah.
And about 2 feet of that are fire tactics manuals. And I was like, wow.
Where's this been?
Great. Exactly.
Yeah.
How come I've not seen any of this stuff?
Right.
And I was astounded that this is like the best kept secret in the fire service. How come nobody outside the city of New York knows about this stuff?
Right.
So I started writing the articles for Firehouse, and that was my topic. I started writing a training column, bi-monthly training column, opposite Vinny Dunn. Vinny did 1 month and I did the other month.
Right.
And, that was good stuff based on what I had learned to that point, was doing to that point. And I guess it was probably about 1989 or 90. I had just gotten promoted. Well, that was part of it. That's what it was. I had studied extremely hard for the lieutenant's exam.
Right.
I was doing 8 hours of studying a day for the lieutenant's exam. I was hungry.
Right.
And all of a sudden, now the test is over, and what do I do with my 8 hours a day that I used to be?
Yeah, right.
So it was like, okay.
Paid it forward.
Yeah. Harvey had taken me down to 14th Street at the time, to the Firehouse Magazine office, and introduced me to Dennis Smith,
right,
who is the founder of Firehouse Magazine. Sure. A report from Engine 82,
right.
Dennis and Dennis says, listen, I want to get into book publishing. I want you to write a book. Wow. And I'm like, Dennis, I mean, I don't know. Write a magazine article column, that's one thing, right?
Yeah, right.
No, look at what you've written already. You got, dozens, if not hundreds of magazine columns. Put them all together into a book.
Yeah.
So that was the genesis of that. But like I say, it was all this time that I had devoted. I had learned, had been taught an awful lot by such great people.
Sure.
And there was this, void in the fire service that didn't have this, that there was no discussion of fire tactics. There were a couple. Now I should back up. There were a couple. Oh man, it just went right through my mind. Fire ground strategies. Yeah. Oh man, I have a copy of it down cellar. I don't have it up here.
No worries. Yeah.
It was a battalion chief in the 4-4 battalion had written it back in the 1960s. Oh man, I can't remember his name, but it was, one of the few fireground strategy or tactics books on the market at the time. And it was, again, that was written in the 60s.
Right.
Now, the 90s. So,
there was a void.
There was a void.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, for sure.
More than just filling a market, it was a void in the fire service knowledge that I said, man, if I had known a lot of this stuff earlier in my career, I could have done a better job at this fire or that fire. Things would have worked differently. And I said, man, I wish I had known all that.
Yeah.
And everybody else should have access to that information as well.
Yeah. So what was your first book then? Was it the Fire Officer?
That was the Fire Officer's Handbook.
It was. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I have my second edition in front of me. The purple binding on it, and it's yellow, like an off orange color. Yeah. And I have the second one, and I was talking about it earlier with you that some of my pages are turned down, and I have things underlined, and so on. And really, a big part of what I wanted to talk to you about today, and I mean, we've been talking for an hour already. I love this, and we're gonna keep going. But just the one thing that I'm really intrigued by was, I was so happy to see you pop up on social media. And, I think back to the articles that were influential to me, the books that you've written, the Fire Officer's Handbook of Tactics. Like I said, I'm looking at my copy right now. I pulled it off the shelf the other day because I knew we were going to be talking, and I was thumbing through, looking at things I underlined. This is a book that I probably read cover to cover 5 times, when I got it back in probably 1999. And it was a couple of years in as a firefighter, and that book to me was, not just the information, but the photos too. The photos of like different building constructions and considerations, and then all different types of applications and operations, and different types of just all of it. And it is it's a nice package, in probably 400 plus pages, I think. And, just to me at the time, the internet didn't exist yet, right? It wasn't that you could just type something in on a search engine and find it. You spent, and I think I read somewhere that this book took you 8 years to write. Did I read that correctly?
No.
Okay.
Like I say, I got done studying in December of '87, and that was published in '91.
Oh, okay. So, all right. I must have read that wrong or read something else. Okay. But
no. Probably took me about 18 months.
Okay. So, but it's 18 months of, no computers, right? I mean, this is like typing. This is, compiling your thoughts and ideas. Like,
I still have the original yellow note pages.
No kidding.
I handwrote.
Wow.
Now, yeah, my wife typed it.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. But when I talk about social media, right, the influence I had was prior to social media, it was reading books and you know, I read those magazines when they came out 3, 4, 5 times every month, cover to cover. I read them. I read them and I read them again, knew every picture in them, knew every fire photo, every fire truck, and every training nugget I could get. I absorbed out of those magazines. For
So did
you,
I.
yeah.
So did I. And some of that saved my life.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading, oh God, the NFPA's Fire Service magazine at the time. I think it was originally it used to be called Fireman,
Okay.
but then they changed it. Anyway, I read an article about a fire. It was one of the first truss collapses in Orange County, Florida, and a dramatic series of photographs taken before the collapse and then during and after the collapse. And a firefighter was trapped inside the burning building after the truss collapsed on him, and he used his SCBA cylinder as a battering ram to make it out through a plate glass window. I took that. I said, man, great move. Great move. And that was one of those things. I read it and I tucked it away in the back of my mind. And in 92 or 90, no, it had to be 90 or 91. I had a fire where I found myself cut off, trapped, and the room had flashed over and now blocked my escape. And I went to the window and hit it with my tool, and it bounced off. And now I remembered that firefighter in Orange County, Florida, due to that magazine article.
Yeah.
And I used my SCBA cylinder and got myself out of trouble.
Wow.
So yeah, those tips can save lives.
Wow.
You'd be amazed what you remember at that particular moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow, that's powerful. That's sheesh. And that was, you know, just thinking about all of it and how do I bring it back to this conversation, but it's very much you had to wait every month for those few nuggets to come out.
Yeah.
Whereas today it's unlimited in the ability to seek out information, right? And so to see you pop up like on Instagram, I was like, "Oh, wow, look at this. This is exciting." And so talk to me a little bit about that for that process for you, because that's really where we connected. You know, I said, you know, please.
That's really, it's another long story, but my middle son is an IT guy.
Right.
He is an IT whiz. You know, he had been a firefighter. He had been to my classes. He'd seen, you know, all my photographs. I mean, I've been taking pictures, like I said, for 55, 56 years.
Sure.
He's, Dad, you have all these photographs. There is this application called Instagram where those pictures would make an impact. And I fought it. I did not want any part of it.
Of course.
I don't know, you know, and when I first tried it, I was having technical difficulties, and I my wife came in one day and I was yelling at the computer, cursing. What's going on? This damn thing ain't working.
Right.
It's the stupidest thing. And she said, you know, just call Patrick, and Patrick, you know, will talk you through it.
I love it.
And yeah, he got me through it because, my generation did not grow up with computers.
Sure.
You know, I've used them for 30 years, but I'm not current on every app that comes out.
No, I get it.
I'm a fan of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, they both coaxed me through it and got me going to where, okay, now I've got my two-wheeler speed up, you know, and I can do it by myself. But when I had the training wheels on, you know, it was not going well.
But you stayed with it. And I think that that's so important, because I'm in a lot of different chat groups with a lot of different guys across the country, and some real, you know, big names and guys that have been instrumental in my career. and my upbringing in the fire service, names that are, on the same level as John Norman, and guys that have been writing for many years. And I read their articles younger, and they're now friends, and I chat with them regularly. And I think about, a lot of times they're talking about different things that are out there right now, and they're saying, oh, do you see that article, or you see that picture? We did that 20 years ago. This guy never gets credit for it, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I say, yeah, but you guys, I want you guys to put yourselves, and it's hard because a lot of people don't want to put themselves out there because it takes a lot of work. And my point of this is that there's so much good out there. And if we can capture the good and put it out there for people to know, if we share the word and share pictures and experiences and stories, we're pushing this job forward. And for you, Chief, to put your content out there, your photos, your insights, your thoughts, your experiences, and to put that where maybe a 22-year-old kid that's not subscribing to a magazine anymore, or doesn't really buy books or read books, but he digests social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, for you to put yourself there, that's you making that effort to still push forward and push this job forward by talking to the next generation. And you're giving that 22-year-old kid the ability to learn who you are, your insights into the job, your passion for it, and all the sacrifices you've made along the way to promote the job and push it forward. And I think that's really what matters most here, no?
Oh, absolutely. That's why I keep doing it.
I love it.
I get a lot of feedback from people. I have 2 sons on the job.
Right.
They, tell me, Dad, there are companies that don't drill.
Yeah.
And when you throw something up today, they'll talk about it in the firehouse.
I love it.
That will be the drill of the day. That's all some guys get, which is a damn shame. But okay, if I can make
that's
that
right.
kind of that's one little contribution. And I've gotten some great feedback from some people that I really, really admire. Like you say, those
sure.
great people out there.
Absolutely.
And okay, I'll keep doing it as long as I can. When I run out of pictures,
I don't think you're gonna run out of pictures, Chief.
Send me pictures,
Yeah, right.
It's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard some days.
I'm sure it is, but man, what you get to do though with that, between your writings and now putting it out there on platforms that are being digested daily by firefighters, you're creating your legacy. You're leaving a legacy behind. And, I speak about that a lot because I think it's so important that we know where we come from. And people that have been instrumental in pushing this job forward need a platform that we appreciate and understand who they are and their contributions to the fire service. And it's now done in perpetuity. You don't have to go to a used books. I take my daughter to used bookstores. She's a huge book nerd.
Great.
She's 15 years old. She reads 700 pages a week almost, Chief. She reads and reads and reads. It's unbelievable. And I told my kids from very early on in life, I said, the one thing I'll never say no to are books. You want to buy a book? I'll buy you any book you want, anytime you want. And so I take her to bookstores, used bookstores, and she loves all of it. And I start finding myself looking for fire books, and I'm not the biggest reader because I don't have a lot of time to sit and read books, but I hope to one day be able to put my feet up and start digesting the books that I've been collecting. And I love finding these books, but what that tells me is a lot of people aren't sourcing out books anymore. And, that's frightening to me. So my point is that for you to put your word on social media and on networks that people are digesting of today, the books of today, if you will, it's leaving your legacy in perpetuity, and that your grandkids, your great-grandkids, your great-great-grandkids, or a probie 50 years from now in the FDNY will be able to find your content and learn who you are. And that, to me, is the most important thing we can do for the fire service.
Yeah, it is. It is important,
Yeah. Well, I believe it. And I want to hit on 2 things that are in the book. I was reading the forward and a few things in the front of the book, and you mentioned your mentor, Steve Cassani, right? Cassani? Yep. Okay.
Yep.
And then in the book, paying it forward, in your forward here, you said it's a couple paragraphs thanking your family and those that were influential on the job. And then it says, and this is from your book, the Fire Officer's Handbook. It says, finally, to all the members of all my units, none of you have ever let me down. Without some of you, I wouldn't be here to write this now. I love you all. Stay safe. And that, to me, follows right in line with what Steve Cassani did for you. It's promoting your people and finding people that pushed you forward to be better. You certainly were somebody in my fire service career over 28 years that early on, I knew who you were. I read your word. I read your articles, and I want you to know that you were impactful on my career. So I thank you very much for that. I really do.
As I said, somebody else taught me so much of what I know today.
Yeah.
And without literally, guys have saved my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will thank you very much for spending some time with me today. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, and I know there's plenty to talk about, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for trusting me today with your story. Thank you for joining me today and sharing a few stories and experiences. And, to me and the people that are listening, these are the people that we want to seek out and learn their stories. Everybody has a story in the fire service, Chief. And some stories are just super powerful and impactful. And you certainly have made a difference in the fire service, and you continue to do so. And for that, I'm grateful, and I thank you very much.
All right.
Awesome. Chief, thank you. Yeah, thank you for joining me. I know you do travel, you speak at different conferences, and so on. If there's a way people need to reach out to you if they're looking to speak with you further or maybe grab you for a conference or something, how can they reach out to you, Chief?
Well, the easiest is through my website.
Okay.
It's www.chiefnorman, all one word.
Perfect.
Chiefnorman.com, right.
Perfect. I appreciate that.
It says, give us feedback, and it comes right to me.
Excellent.
Or they get me on the Instagram account.
That's my favorite part of this whole podcast right there. Or hit me up on my Instagram account, Chief Norman. Yeah. I love it.
If anybody had told me I would say that ever in my year ago, I say you're out of your mind.
I'm clipping that up for a post. That's fantastic. Chief, thank you so much, making me laugh here at the end, man. What a great conversation today. I'm honored to have you on. You have an open invitation to join me at any time you want to come back and chat about the job and chat and spread the good word. Man, you have an open invitation here anytime. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
All right, Jeremy. Thank you, sir.
Good. Stay right where you are. I'm just going to sign off the podcast, and then I'll come right back to you. Okay, Chief? Hang on one second. So, everyone, thank you for tuning in for a very special episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. Chief John Norman, man, what a great conversation today, and I will get him back on because we're just scratching the surface on an incredible career and so on. And if you're not familiar with Chief Norman, please familiarize yourself. Seek him out on social media. Look up his website. Go to Instagram. His posts are inspirational. They're knowledgeable, and they really are pushing the job forward. He's been writing and working on behalf of the American Fire Service for a very long time, and he was instrumental in my career. So do me a favor. Take this conversation you heard on the podcast today, take it back to the firehouse and talk about it. Educate people about who Chief Norman is. Because when we talk about the job, we make the job better. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio. National Fire Radio.